Could the biggest revenue opportunities in your business be hiding in plain sight, perhaps buried inside data that you might not even be looking at? Well, in today's episode, we're pulling back the curtains with someone who's helped many top performing studios to really streamline their operations, retain more clients, and stop losing money through the cracks by diving into the data. She's a Division 1 athlete turned tech founder, and her insights will really change how you run your studio. We're talking about what the top studios are doing differently and some of the most misunderstood parts of retention and metrics, and some of the surprisingly simple data points that could really shift so much for your bottom line in your studio business.
Well, hi there, I'm Seran Glanfield. I'm a business and marketing strategist just for boutique fitness studio owners like you. If you're ready to be inspired and make a bigger impact, you're in the right place. All you need are a few key strategies, the right mindset, and some support along the way. Join me as I share the real-life insights that will help you grow a sustainable and profitable studio. This is the Pilates Business Podcast.
Welcome back to the Pilates Business Podcast. I'm Seran Glanfield, and thank you so much for joining me today. This is where all of you passionate studio owners come to learn, to grow, to lead, and to thrive without burning out in the process. And I know that many of you feel like you're running your studio with 17 open tabs in your brain, juggling marketing and retention and client communications and team operations, and of course, the revenue reports, while still also trying to teach the best you can. And so today's episode is going to feel like a breath of fresh air because we're going to be talking about we're going to be really demystifying the data and the data component of your business. Because today's guest is Tessa. She is the co-founder of Pipeline Solutions. This is a platform that she built specifically for boutique fitness studio operations. She has a background as a Division 1 athlete, super inspiring. And she has blended that sort of power that she has and that strong ability to perform at a high level with a deep passion for fitness and tech and all the things in between. And her career has taken her around the world from places like London to New York to Sydney. And today she's on a mission to help studio owners to simplify using data. So welcome, Tessa. I'm so glad you're here.
Amazing. Thanks, Seran. That was quite the intro. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, I love when I get to connect with folks like you and we can talk all the things studio business and data, because I think it's one of the most sort of mysterious parts that people find about building a business and growing a business, especially as an entrepreneur. And where does the data sit? How does it fit? What should I be looking at? What is it telling me? So I'm glad you are doing what you're doing. And so why don't we kick off and why don't you share a little bit about Pipeline Solutions and what you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pipeline Solutions is essentially your all-in-one platform for boutique fitness and wellness operations. So we integrate with booking management platforms to essentially cut down on a lot of that noise and deliver the analytics and metrics that matter most, accompanied by automations and in-app kind of actions. So from lead management to analytics to executive oversight, we cover everything across the board. So you can kind of look into one place, understand what's happening in your business, and also be able to take action in that same place as well. And all that's supported by payments and bookings through your booking management system.
So tell us a little bit about how Pipeline Solutions came to be.
Of course. Yeah. So what's the journey? How did we get here? Always a bit more circuitous than you probably think it would have been from the get-go. But so my co-founder and I started Pipeline about 6 years ago. I was a coach. And I have a background in, as you mentioned, athletics and fitness, and had been doing group fitness instructing and coaching for some time up to that point. I had also just happened to get, pretty interested in software and app development, just from a personal interest standpoint. And those two worlds kind of came together with Pipeline, and essentially approaching John, who is my co-founder in Pipeline, who is the owner of the studio that I was coaching in, and just, kind of sitting down with him and asking what is not fun, what is the least favorite part of, kind of operating this business. And, part of what he had gotten to, of course, there's some automations and things like that. So those are some of the things we built early on: late cancel automation, double booking, removing people from double bookings in classes, things like that. But what he really wanted to see was he wanted to be able to just understand from a business performance standpoint, how the studio was doing by just glancing at a dashboard and getting all those metrics in one place without having to go pull all those reports. And it was also a period of growth for that business, which was great. So it wasn't coming from a place of, kind of dire, we really need these needs, we need all these things to come in. It actually wasn't that kind of energy. It was more so, okay, the things that we were doing at 100 and 150 members are no longer working at 250, 300, 350 members. We need a new playbook, but I need to understand where to put my energy and how to kind of go about that. And then also with the idea of opening another location and things like that, right? So you're talking about kind of starting to scale, and all of a sudden, all those reports become that thing you'll get to, and you don't get to it. And by the time you do, now you're looking at data that's 6 weeks old, and trying to work off things that are outdated. So that's kind of the origin story of how Pipeline started. And I started building from that point, and kind of built the first version of our product through, I would not call myself an engineer by any stretch, but the interest in that technical side of the business allowed me to kind of build a V1. And now we have our CTO, Mike, who has really elevated the platform into what it is today, and has built out really something very performant and really kind of world class on the analytics standpoint for boutique fitness.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what types of studios you do work with. What do they offer? How, what types of services they offer, and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with a range of studios or concepts as is right now. So a lot of the F45 network, of course, with our partnership with them. So essentially functional training or HIIT. Really any class-based boutique is great fit for us. So we do work also with FS8, so the Pilates brand that is under the Fit umbrella, and another Pilates location as well. And then we also work with a couple of locations that are a bit more bespoke, I guess you could say. So they might do turf rentals or have boxing classes, and also offer personal training and kind of a model that has a few different modalities under one roof. So really across the board, we work with any really kind of class-based location. And currently, if they integrate with MindBody, that's a perfect fit. We have some other booking platforms that we're integrating with this year. So more to come on that. But any MindBody studio that is class-based.
Excellent. Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about, obviously you've seen and worked with many really strong studios when it comes to growth, right? So you see the behind the scenes and see the data and can see what really has worked and what type of projection or trajectories, I should say, that these studios have. Well, what do you observe about that what do you observe about those studios who are on a strong growth trajectory?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think, the things that always stand out to me is that those studios and those operators are on top of those numbers. They really do understand their business kind of back to front and can speak to any one of those metrics at any given point in time. They have a deep understanding of not just what's happening, but why. So for example, if we're looking at, conversion rates for a particular month, like perhaps their trial offer just changed within those last 4 to 6 weeks, and they can see immediately how that's impacting some of those conversion metrics, as opposed to kind of waiting to see what happens in 4 to 6 weeks. You're seeing it in real time. So I think just being dialed in and understanding that, businesses are kind of like a living and breathing thing. You have to really stay on top of them, and know what's going on at any given point in time. And I find the most successful operators are very tuned in to what's happening in their business, why those things are happening, and kind of a few areas that will always be the focal point. So those, conversion metrics are always a focal point. But then on the back end of that, their cancellation percentage or their churn, there are a number of at-risk members, their suspended members, all those retention metrics are super key as well. And those are the things that are the drivers of revenue. So of course they're keenly aware of their revenue each month, absolutely. But what are the things that are actually driving that, right? And kind of getting kind of granular into those areas. So that would be the first thing that stands out. The second is knowing those things is one. Having a playbook to action those things is another thing. So typically what we see is that there's a very set of steps that are occurring to try and move those metrics in any which way. And the best operators are experimental, right? They'll try something, see if it works, try something again, see if it works. The only way you can do that is if you're able to see what is happening with those experiments and have a very clear idea of the metrics that are moving. So those are the first two things that stand out. And then the third would honestly just be mindset. Would be the, coming into something thinking that it's going to be successful and understanding where you want to go with that business. Like, do you want to operate it as a person on the floor, forever? Yes, maybe it's that, that thing that you want to do. Would you prefer to be a bit more behind the scenes? What does that look like if that's going to happen? Do we need a studio manager or a general manager that can fill in those shoes on the floor and kind of build from there? So kind of that mindset and vision of what the future looks like, I'd say, is that third piece that really drives it. Because if that is unclear, then actually everything you're doing day to day becomes a bit ad hoc and is not really kind of being driven towards that destination.
Absolutely. You make so many great points. And there is, I think, amongst, many studio owners who come into the world of studio ownership or founding their own studio as a movement practitioner, there's a lot of, I think much of what you just shared is perhaps somewhat of somewhat sort of uncharted waters, and I think that the data portion of what ultimately drives your ability to build and grow a business is so significant. And without really understanding the numbers, and I think you mentioned, top line revenue number is one thing, yes, but it's irrelevant actually, because what really matters is what's happening underneath the hood of the business.
Absolutely.
And requires you to sort of drill down into some of these data points. So I was looking earlier on at one of my studio owners' key numbers. And it's the data can send you in different directions, and if you're not sort of looking at that granular level, like you mentioned, it doesn't actually tell you so much about what's going on. You really need to be able to understand and drill down and see what's really happening behind the scenes. So the data component is so important, and then like the mindset, in terms of where you're heading, and also this approach of testing and trying, and then perhaps refining and improving. And for that to be successful, you have to have data to be able to measure either performance.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Otherwise, you're like in the dark, you're blind, right?
And you want to experiment. I think people inherently are happy to do that, to try, test out another offer or a promotion or these things and other things. And that's totally fine. But, I think having looked at so much data over the last 5 or 6 years, it's so powerful to be able to always compare apples to apples, right? And so if you kind of lose track of the foundations of those experiments, they can lead you in a direction that is not necessarily kind of true or accurate to what you're trying to get out of it. So we're always kind of making sure that we do that when we're working with, the CEOs that we work with, or we're doing any kind of custom reporting, is we want to make sure that we are comparing, like situations and environments to like situations and environments, so that we can actually delineate if the experiment has worked. And the only way to do that is to have that information, or else you can be at the mercy of seasonality or, a different set of circumstances and all sorts of things. So it's really critical, if you are going to run experiments, that or if you're going to compare data, that it's, you're comparing the apples to apples.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned retention. It's a huge conversation that we talk about. Well, I talk about with my studio owners inside of my program, every week. Tell us a little bit about what you see some of the strongest performing studios do with regards to retention, what the data looks like, what data points you are looking at, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Retention is kind of the lesser sexy side of the business. Everyone, loves the sales and all the lead management and all that fun stuff. But if things are kind of leaking out the back, then all of that's kind of for naught. So I love talking about retention, because I also am very much in kind of the camp that, we're in a very AI driven, automation driven kind of world now. And all that's great. It's helpful. Like, I get it. Like I said, we've been in these spaces. I still coach every once in a while. I'm also in there training all the time. So I get it. It's a heavy lift when you have, 250, 300 members and a team of, 5 or 6 people. It's a lot. So you kind of want to be able to take some things off your plate. But for me, everything still starts with what's happening on the floor or in the location. And really, retention it's a bunch of different things, which I'll touch on, but that experience it's why we all got into what we're doing. It's the driver of your business. And if that experience is not reflective of the promise that was made to that person when they signed up, that's where we, start to lose them. And there's different stages, we can get into that. But I always kind of reiterate that if at any point in time you feel like the quality of what's happening on the floor or the standard of what's happening on the floor is not where you want it to be, like that's the gut, that's the intuition side of retention that I think every operator is very aware of. They're very attuned to, because they know what they want that thing to be. So I always just say to absolutely start there, because it's the thing that you can feel in your space and understand. Like, if I'm walking into this class, would I want to take this class? Is one of the first questions I always, kind of ask people, is like, if you're walking into your classes, make sure that you want to be there, like your members should want to be there as much as you want to be there. And so we can start there. So I always kind of say, start there with the gut check of, are we meeting the standard that I want us to meet on the floor? And if that is yes, then we'll go into, kind of the analytics side of things. If that's no, then that's a different conversation, and that's where I think things need to start. But if that is yes, then there's different stages of retention. So if a location offers a trial, which a lot do, and that trial can be all different types of offers. It could be a single day, it could be 3 for 10 or 30 days even. But that's really your first stage of retention, is can you retain somebody through just their trial, right? Like, that person raised their hand, they said, hey, I'm interested. They signed up or created a profile or even bought the offer. Now, can we literally retain them through that trial? Can we get them into class? Can we book them to class? Can we get them there? Can we have a follow-up conversation with them? Can we potentially convert them into a membership? So it's funny, like we call it the leads funnel, but that's also kind of your first retention funnel, right? Is can people even kind of make it through that trial in that, from the time they raise their hand and they think that this is the solution for them, are you following up on that promise through that trial, whether that's 1 day or 30 days? And, what does that look like? So there's different, metrics you can track there the metrics we track are essentially that lead created, booked, visited, and converted to a membership or a class pack, for example.
When you look, I'm just going to interject with
Yeah,
some
of course.
sprinkling of questions here. I'm so curious. When you track that data and the data that you see on your end, do you find that there is sort of a sweet spot for the type of intro offer that works for some of the group class offerings that your studios offer?
That's a good question. So the offer itself definitely can vary. And I think that is maybe a little bit market dependent as well. Some places are just a bit different in that way as to what kind of stands out in terms of their offering. But what we do typically see is conversion rates tend to trend towards 2 to 3 visits. So if that traveler can get in between like 2.5, 3 times in their trial period, they're more likely to convert. So, pardon me, there's, definitely offers that allow for that. Of course, are going to tend to be more successful. I think the kind of just that single free class is a little bit tight to be able to convert somebody. Look, if your team is absolutely crushing it and you can convert off of that first single class, then by all means, go for it. But most people need 2 or 3 classes to see if it's the right fit. It also allows for them to experience more offerings. Like if you have different classes or if you have different instructors or coaches or teachers, then they can kind of get more of a feel for what's going on in the space. And then the kind of follow-up to that is it gives you and your team more time to get to know that person and communicate the value, but also from a standpoint of understanding what their goals and needs are. Right? It's kind of tricky to get that in one visit unless someone's really open, which does happen. But typically, you kind of got to peel back that onion a little bit. It takes a couple of conversations to understand fully what's happening. So in terms of price point, I don't particularly have, kind of any recommendations on that or anything that we've seen that stood out. But in terms of number of visits, that tends to trend towards a higher conversion rates. It's that kind of 2 to 3 sweet spot.
Yeah. This is what we see too. I was just curious if you were seeing the same data, but yes, I think that's so important. The first class free is very challenging to convert. And I think it often has a big hype because it does pull people in.
Yes.
But when we track the data, I'm sure you track the data and have seen it.
Yeah.
You look retention, even just beyond the intro. If you look sort of 3 months down the road, it's so low that it's just, it's sort of like it doesn't it's not, whatever data you're getting from the visits from the first class free is not actually supportive of business growth long term, has been my observation.
Yeah, typically. Yeah, absolutely. And you get like kind of trial hoppers as well sometimes,
yes.
There's just, all the things that we've all seen. So it's just non-committal, right? And it's the type of thing where if you're looking for more so the drop-ins and class pack people, you probably will see those intro offers maybe convert to those types of services down the road, but less so with, the longer term commitments for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit about what folks are doing in terms of long-term retention. So we talked about the intro offer conversion. So that's kind of one kind of retention measure. But obviously we are looking for clients and members for like longer than just a couple of months. So what do you see those studio owners doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have that kind of first intro retention, and then we move into really those first 30 days. And depending on your modality you're offering, you're really looking for key touch points between that conversion point and let's say 6 or 9 months and that longer term conversion. So one of the things we look out for are, for example, that those first 10 classes right? It's a milestone. It might not feel like it because we're all in these spaces all the time, and 10 classes doesn't necessarily feel like as big a milestone as the people in the space that are hitting 100 or 1,000 or anything like that. But it's huge if someone's just starting out that they hit their first 10 classes. So that's one. And then another metric we like to track is how long does it take them to get to their first 25 classes, right? So can somebody get to 25 classes in their first 60 days? Is another kind of great starting point. And that time, those first 60 days, what we've seen be effective, and the reason I'm still talking about a little bit of the earlier retention is because it leads to that long-term retention, is those first 60 days have got to be high touch. We have to understand, are we meeting the needs that this person came in for? So did we write down their goals when they came in, and are they trending towards those goals as we are, progressing week over week? And it's really critical in those first 30 to 60 days that they're seeing even just, I call them micro wins, but like any kind of micro win or improvement towards what they came in for. If it's increased mobility, if it's strength, if it's literally, I have back pain that I don't want to have anymore. Like, is that starting to reduce? Like, those are the types of conversations and follow-ups that we really want to make sure we're having in those first 30 to 60 days, because it's going to reiterate to that person that this is the place where I need to be. And if that's already happening in the first 1 to 2 months, what you've really done there is you've already extended your retention another, few months beyond that point, because they're, seeing those results, having those conversations, which are kind of reinforcing that, yeah, this is the place I want to be. I'm starting to see results. People actually care, and they're following up with me, and we're trying to get there. So those are kind of those early touch points. And then beyond that, of course, we tend to look towards that visit data. So are they starting to drop off in their visit cadence? Are they starting to late cancel or no show? Are they increasing their visit cadence? Things like that. So personally, in Pipeline, we have a member engagement score, which tracks all that. So we can see when people are starting to drop off, which would trigger, kind of that outreach. And there's different levels of that. There's, low engagement, which is someone that's just kind of starting to drop off. And then there's at risk, which are people that are just silently slipping away and slipping through those cracks and, haven't kind of been followed up within some time. So staying on top of those two categories is just really critical. The studios that are on top of the low engagement people have a shorter list of at-risk people, which is what you want. There's always, no one's going to have 100% retention. That's just not going to happen. But what we're trying to do is get ahead of that by making sure that we're understanding, what's going on in people's lives and what's happening with their visit cadence, and keeping on top of that just with communication. And if we can get ahead of it, then we won't be surprised, if something does come up. And we're not going to have this at-risk category that's, 40 or 50 people deep, and we just didn't know that we haven't seen Brittany in 4 months.
Right. Because how are you supposed to remember that on top of all the other things that you're doing?
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, if we can shift those people, then, and our system's color coded. So it's at risk is red, low engagement is yellow, and then you have your green category, and your all-stars are, kind of your purple, or people that are really crushing it. And the goal there is just to always keep shifting people up, red to yellow, yellow to green. And if we can keep doing that, then over time, and, retention is one of the biggest things that will increase your revenue. So over time, if those categories, those red and yellows can get smaller, you're definitely winning.
Winning. Okay. So tell us what metrics or data points that you think every studio owner should be tracking, but perhaps overlook or miss or forget about. What are those numbers that we should be looking at?
Yeah, I love it. So for us, absolutely on the lead side of things, we don't just track lead to membership conversion, which is typically tracked. We want to really dig into that funnel and understand each step of the process, what's happening there. So we want to track the lead to booked, see what's happening there. So that's going to tell you if that flow has friction, right? If someone is filling out a form, maybe they get an auto text message or something, but they're not booking into their first class. It's what's the friction there? They raised their hand. They said, I'm in, and somewhere along the way they've kind of already dropped off. So that's the first drop off point. So we want to make sure that lead to booked is dialed in. Book to visit. So for any paid offer, paid intro offer, that book to visit percentage should be like 85, 90, 95%. If people are booking and not coming in, it's a big red flag on kind of what's going on there. And sometimes we see that happen if, for whatever reason, the communication flow, the instructors or membership or sales manager are booking people into class for them, kind of in a conversational way. You know, it's like, oh, do you want to come in Friday at 9? And they're like, yeah, I'll come in Friday at 9. And then you book them in, but they don't have it in their calendar, so they don't show up, or they don't have access to the app, or, you know, there's kind of, there can be drop off points there if the kind of the playbook or the system is a little bit, how can I say it? Like maybe too assisted in a way, where that person is not kind of taking the responsibility for their visit. So that can happen. And then we look at, of course, visit to membership. And that always tells a story about the experience, right? So if we see that lead to booked and booked to visit, those metrics are where they should be. But that visit to membership is, you know, kind of in that 15 to 25% range. We really want it, you know, 40%, 50%, something like that. What's happening on the floor, right? Like what's happening when that person comes in for their first visit. And what we love to do, and one of the things that this is one that gets overlooked quite a bit, we surface a list of your trialers that came in fewer than 3 times. So 0, 1, or 2 times, essentially. People that paid for a trial, they only came in once or twice. We want to know why, like what happened there. So not just, it's great to get the conversions, but let's not forget about the people that didn't convert, because that's actually where all the gold is. That's where the answers are. Like, tell me what happened, you know, like I want to know. And what you'll find sometimes is there's definitely a segment of that group where they got sick, or they had to travel, or they just didn't really have an opportunity to come in. You might be able to, you know, get them in. And that's where that 1-day offer might come into play, where it's like, well, we could get you into an extra class, just, you know, as kind of a nice offering for that person. But also you'll get to understand like, oh, well, you know, I didn't really connect with this instructor, or the class was too fast paced for me, or I have limitations and I feel like it's going to be too much. You're going to start to understand what's going on there. So the list of people that come in and don't convert, I think, is probably one of the most overlooked segments and like data points that we have to improve the sales process as a whole. So that's definitely a big one that I would encourage people to dive into, and it can be painful. So I don't want to say that it's not.
Yes.
I get it. I'm also a business owner. I want to understand too. And those conversations can be hard, but you're going to learn the most from them. So
for sure. Yeah, there's, you know, I think it's whenever we do, because, you know, we look at the KPIs with our studio owners, I'm always like, oh, look, there's all these people that became leads but didn't actually book, or booked and then never showed up, or, you know, there's all these people who are in your world that we have warm enough that we should be reaching out and pulling them back in, you know. And I think that I agree. I think that's one of those missed opportunities for most, for sure.
Yeah, and I think as well, it doesn't always, like, it can just be an information finding event, right? You could take the stress off of, you know, this isn't a sales conversation. This is me trying to understand, you know, just your feedback and what we could do to improve. And so, you know, even if you reach out to 10 of those people and only 2 of them let you know something, it's 2 now kind of data points that you didn't have before. And it can help a lot once you start to do that, because there's, to be honest, most studios we interact with have hundreds of people in that list of warm, you know, they raised their hand at some point, they're not members now, and it would be great to understand why.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, last quick question for you as a founder. What is one lesson that you've learned on your business journey that you think will be helpful to studio owners?
Oh boy. Oh, that's so hard.
I know that's the problem. Is just one.
It's just one. It is just one. Oh goodness. I think the biggest lesson is, I kind of touched on it, but that mindset side of things is really, it's everything. I think it's everything. in our business, it's the same, even though it's not, we're a SaaS business that helps fitness businesses. But we've been in the fitness business as well for a long time. And it's just really critical to have a vision for what you want that business to be and who you need to be to get it to that place. So I think, the really big lesson is that the business growth, we're the ceilings on our business growth. So the business will never be bigger than the operator or owner or founder or creator. That person needs to continue to evolve so that the business can continue to evolve. So whatever that looks like, for you, it means that that's the discomfort of entrepreneurship, is that you kind of have to keep growing if you want the business to keep growing. And there's many different forms that takes depending on the person. But I'd say that that's the biggest lessons. I'd look for, those areas where you feel like you're pretty comfortable, and try and step into them a little bit more. And I wouldn't be surprised if the business kind of, transforms in that way as well.
For sure. Well, this was I could keep talking to you about this for days, but it's time to wrap it up. So I want to say thank you so much for being so open and generous with your insights. Such interesting. It's so interesting always to hear what you're seeing, especially from a data perspective, and the quantity of data that you see, and all of and diving into not just what the data is telling you, but also, some of the tools that you use and tactics that you use to help make sure that data is all trending in the right direction. So thank you so much. Do you want to just quickly share and let us know where people can reach out and get in touch with you to learn a bit more about Pipeline Solutions and what they can do to help?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So we are Pipeline Solutions. So it's pipeline- or -solutions.co. So that's our website. You can see a recorded demo on the site, which is really great. Or you can find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Tessa Thomas. I think I'm the first Tessa T on LinkedIn. So if you just search for Tessa Thomas, you might find me there. By all means, reach out. So Tessa at pipeline-solutions.co. Happy to chat with anybody that's interested in learning more.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to link to that in the show notes as well, so you guys don't need to go and find it. You can just click in the link. Thanks, Tessa, so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Seran.
So I hope this was helpful to you as you go about building your boutique fitness studio business. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, I would be so appreciative if you could take a quick minute, go to wherever you're listening to this, and rate and review this podcast. It would mean so much to me and help to get this podcast out into our amazing community of teachers, instructors, and studio owners around the world.
Did you love this episode and want more? Head to spring3.com and check out my free resources that will help you run a profitable and fulfilling studio business. And before you go, one last reminder, there is no one way to do what you do, only your way. So whatever it is that you want to do, create, or offer, you've got this. Thanks again for joining me today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.